Chevrolet, taking charge.
Make your move to Chevrolet's new Celebrity.
Move into more.
Move into the comfort of more passenger room than 91 out of 95 import cars. Move into Celebrity and the traction of front drive.
Move into more.
Celebrity. No other new car gives you this much passenger room at a price this low. Chevrolet, official U.S. cars and trucks of the 1984 Winter Olympics.
Welcome to the first installment of Cars That Time Forgot. In this episode, I will be going over the oft-forgotten Chevy Celebrity. Starting life on the GM front-wheel drive A platform, not to be confused with the older rear-wheel drive A platform, the Chevy Celebrity was General Motors rebadging at its absolute worst, when GM's automotive lineup was at its most bloated amongst all its divisions. During the mid-80s, General Motors had badge-engineered cars for every marque across every platform and size class in its roster. The thought process behind a lot of this was that as you made more money year to year, you would upgrade your marque. On the lower end, you would buy Chevys. Small-time managers bought Pontiacs, middle managers would buy Oldsmobiles, and so on and so forth. GM and Ford had been using this general business model since the 50s, and when options on cars were limited and fleets of vehicles were smaller. This was a big buck enterprise, and it worked very well for them. During the 80s, though, times had changed. The oil crisis had made smaller, cheaper, more fuel-efficient cars more desirable, even across the various strata of American wealth. American automakers were also starting to have stiff competition in the lower-end markets with Japanese automakers, as well as tough competition in the high-end market from European automakers. By the time the Celebrity hit showroom floors, along with its rebadged twins, the Pontiac 6000, Buick Century, and Oldsmobile Cutlass Sierra, buyers were sick and tired of them. Fortune magazine, and subsequently Hemmings Motor News, created such a huge embarrassment for GM by covering the blatant rebadging that it would go on to cause General Motors itself to completely overhaul division brand identity, which would inevitably lead to the death of Oldsmobile at the turn of the millennium. For the car itself, it did sell in good numbers, mostly for the sedan, with numbers hitting just over 2 million sold. That raises the question, where did they all go? Like most of the other forgettable cars GM put out in the 80s, like the Citation and its X-Body siblings, which I will have a very special video on in the future, and also the Beretta/Corsica, most people just didn't keep them around, especially with how cheap they were, with an MSRP of around $11,000. You bought them from the dealership, and when your warranty was up or it started having mechanical problems, they got traded in. This is mostly speculation, but I believe due to their dime-a-dozen nature, along with a lot of other mid-80s GM cars, they weren't destined for a very long life in the used market. They just weren't exactly seen as collectible or worth saving. They were cheap cars, even brand new, meant to be driven until they weren't worth the money anymore. And when used owners got them, they were cheap beaters, likely driven until they couldn't drive anymore. Ultimately destined for junkyards and demolition derbies until the dreaded and off-the-line cash for clunkers took a lot of them off the road for good. That concludes this small overview. If you owned or know anybody that had a Celebrity, tell me about it in the comments below. The goal of this series isn't to deride or lambast these old vehicles, but to shed some new light on them, maybe revitalize a little interest in it, and share their stories. Sometimes it's nice to reminisce about simple commodity cars like the Chevy Celebrity. I mean, after all, they used to be everywhere. That's all for today. Thank you guys for watching.